Welcome traders to our midweek technical analysis video. So obviously, as you know, we switched up the Monday and done a write-up on our Monday start of week technical analysis and instead decided to move it to our Wednesday just for this week, since last week we decided to do a post-week market review. So with all that being said, let's have a look what has happened this week thus far and what we can sort of expect for gold. So coming to where we started the market, so sort of market opened around this area here, and as you can see, the initial open price became bullish. So we ended up pushing up and testing some of our lower time frame points of interest. Price then started to consolidate between these sort of red ranges that we have here. We've marked them with these red horizontal lines, with price then eventually finding support one last time at around the level of around 3,210. Price then tested this same sort of area one more time before we had this enormous bullish push, with price pushing all the way up to around 3,315, where price is currently sort of trading within. As you can see, this is one of our points of interest, and what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and have a closer look on our minute 15 time frame. So let's just zoom right in to where we are now. So this is where we are now. And this is what we're looking at. So as you can see, we have a strong structure. So obviously this is sort of the end. This was the end of New York session here. Throughout New York session, we had a strong bullish push, and then price started to consolidate after volume left the market. Sort of price ended up coming, sorry, this was the start of New York session, and then throughout New York session until close, we had some low volume and just some consolidation around this area. Then sort of climbing in towards Asian session, we then saw a nice little bullish push, low volume, and we started creating higher highs and higher lows with a big pull here, which would have been a news event or something economic taking place that would have injected a lot of volume into the market and causing a lot of slippage, as you can see by the exhaustion of this wick and then the exhaustion of this, creating an actual lower low in comparison to this bit here. So taking this out of account, if you will. So the reason why we're not going to look at this is because you can see how big this wick is. It was definitely going to be something economical, something news event wise, not real market structure. So this higher high and this higher low is, or sorry, this lower low is not going, we're not going to take it into account too much, especially as the market ended up continuing. So following on, so higher high, higher low, and then we had another higher high and a higher low, and then it looks like we're doing the same sort of thing. If you notice the higher lows that are being created, so for example, the first higher high was here and the first higher low was here. So if I was to mark this in and just sort of drag this in, you can see that this was the original test of this support before we started pushing into this sort of bullish wedge. And it's going to be the same thing so far. So for example, we have another higher low. You can see that it was source of the testing on around the same sort of point at where the candlestick finished for the start of this bullish wedge, so the higher high. And then as you can see recently, we created this higher low, which is roughly testing on another higher high here. So as you can see, we're sort of creating a small pattern here. So with that being said, what could we expect next for gold? So if we were to continue this pattern, and let's just start from here. Let's say we continue this pattern, creating higher highs and higher lows. Our next higher high would be roughly somewhere around the 3,330 range, around that sort of area, with price then coming down to one of our next points of interest, so around 3,315 to 3,320. Price then comes down to here to test as a support on previous resistance or a previous higher high, and then continues up. That's one scenario. That's if price continues to follow this pattern. And after the years and years that I personally have been trading gold, and however long you have been trading gold, you know that gold doesn't really like to tend to pattern. Gold doesn't tend to like to follow patterns. Try saying that one fast. For too long. So this pattern won't continue. The chances of this pattern continuing all the way up into the newer highs is very low. You're going to have some liquidation grabs. You're going to have some fair value gaps that need to be found, and so on and so forth. But with that being said, right now we are testing on a previous support for gold, and as you can see down there, we have had a gold with a little bit of news for gold. So gold rate today, yellow metal increases. Check the latest price. So we're getting news events. We're getting told about that gold is hiking. We are seeing that gold is starting to rally, especially after these depths that we was trading in. If you remember, a few weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, we was trading all the way down in the depths, back close to the 2000s, really. But as you can see, we are now pulling out of this area, and obviously we are only on our minute 15. But you can see that was a big steep drop, and we are now finally pulling out of it. And you can see, if I sort of just look at the chart, or we look at the chart like this, you can see that this point of interest that we're currently at, marked by this horizontal rectangle, is a very, very important psychological point of interest, a key level. You can see that multiple times we've tested as a support, multiple times we've tested as a resistance, and that has stayed consistent for quite a while since the point of interest was made on around the 16th of April 2025. So with that being said, on the lower time frames, what we're looking for is sort of this price area to be tested as a support. But do not worry, because if we do see price come all the way down, for example, cancelling out this little pattern of higher highs and higher lows, for example, if we saw price come down to here, we still have that possibility for price then to go all the way back up. But going back to our hour one, and looking at that point of interest that we just spoke about again, just in a little bit more detail, just so you can see the candlesticks properly. So you can see multiple times. If I was to go ahead, and we can go ahead and grab a circle real quick, and just sort of mark in only the last few points. We'll mark in the last few points and go from there. But you can see from what I'm marking in, you can see multiple times we have tested this price as both support and resistance, and what it looks to be right now is we are testing, or price is struggling at this area, which with what right now looks to be as a resistance on our hour one. Why do we say as a resistance? Because price touched this level. As you can see, price touched this level. We then started to reach these lower time frame levels. If you remember, we marked in these lower time frame levels on our minute 5, I believe it was. So we have just sort of like a cushion. For example, if we go to our minute 5 again, you can see that it's a range, again tested as a resistance and then tested as a support. We had a price break, and that is the lower level that price is testing on right now. If price could hold this area as a support, for example, clearing or staying away from any of this sort of area, or staying within this sort of area and not surpassing this low here, we will most likely see that push. Once we see that push, we'll wait for this 3,315 level to be broken through, and then we'll look for our next lower time frame point of interest of around 3,320, and then it'll be back to our higher time frames, looking for that next level of around 3,340. But as of right now, you can see, so we've had that big bullish push, and we are starting to see some sort of respect of this area. On the higher time frames, if we continue to see this area respect this point of interest of around 3,315 as a resistance, price will most likely drop down. Whether we drop down to the next level that could potentially act as a support, or we come all the way back down to test again, like we were just talking about, these lower depths, sort of the resistance that was found here. So we could end up having a bearish day today. Price could come down to this level and then push up. But our overall long-term bias for gold as of right now is definitely going to be a bullish move, dragging price out of this area. Why do I say that again? So let's go on to our daily time frame. As you can see, you definitely had, if I go ahead and grab another circle for you, I do like these circles now, you can see that this sort of area here has tested as a support on the higher time frames. So, and where was the depth tested? Where is these exhausted wicks? What is it showing us? It's showing us at this level here that was a previous all-time high before price then catapulted and dropped back down to test near to another previous all-time high. So higher time frames, overall bias is going to be bullish. We're expecting a bullish push. Whereas if you come to your minute, your weekly time frame, you might be a little bit confounded, or you might be a little bit confused, because it looks to be some sort of resistance is being found. If I just take this and just use that here, you can see that this area we are seeing some sort of build up for the last, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks roughly since, or 4 weeks since the all-time high of around 3,500 was created. We have tested within this same sort of range, and as you can see, if I just sort of measure that range, we're talking from 3,120 to around 3,430 30, let's say. Let's just round it up and go to 40. So you're talking a 3,000 pip range, and price has tested this area for quite some time. But if you were to look back in history and have a look what has happened when price has sort of done this build up or tested the same area as range, you can see that, for example, we had that same sort of pattern as we have here, and price then continued bullish. But again, it's gold, and you never know what could happen. For example, if I look for the same sort of pattern, you can see that we saw this. But the only difference between this and then this is the fact that this price came up to test a previous all-time high. You can see that the latest, the most recent all-time high in comparison to this was this level here of around 2073 or 74. Price then came up, pushed very, very, very close, hitting about 2070, and then dropped back down. So that's why this area, you might think, oh, well, that's the same thing there. How do we know that it's not going to go bearish? Because we are pushing. We've already created our all-time high. It's not like any time in the market have we ever traded at these levels on this higher time frame. So there's no real higher time frame level to go off of. However, as you can see this week so far, we have seen a bullish candlestick. So what we're looking for on the higher time frames to not only give us more confidence in our overall bullish bias, but for a new all-time high, we're looking for a candlestick to sort of break and finish anywhere above this level. So if this weekly candlestick, so if we get a little bit more bullish momentum this week before the Friday close, we're looking for roughly, it's not even a lot of pips, we're looking for anything like maybe 300 to 400 pip move left on this candlestick. If we can get at least a 350 to 400 pip move and the candlestick finishes above here, it will completely wipe out any of this data and give us more confidence in that price is going to hit a new all-time high. So enough with the higher time frames. Let's go back to hour one and just conclude everything. So we've had our bullish push after testing the depths, going closer and closer to that 2000 level again. Price is now pushing up, and we are now testing a key point of interest of around 3,315. Remember, this is a psychological level. It's not a specific price. It's just sort of a range, an area that we like to have a closer look at when price does reach it. What we could expect is one of two things, or maybe one of three things. So we could see a bearish flip here. We could then come down all the way to around 3,260, test this previous, this sort of like, let's call this the depth range. Let's call it, or you know what, not depth, let's say depth. Let's call this the depth range. So this was like, okay, cool. Is gold now flipping to a higher time frame overall bias or bearish? This was sort of that area. Once we saw price come back into in between these sort of ranges and then push on out, wiping out this higher time frame level, we then gave us confidence. Okay, cool. We're most likely not going to be going back down to that level. But what we could potentially see is price drop down and test this previous sort of resistance of this depth area or this depth range, and then push up from there. Another scenario we could see going down to our minute 15, just looking at a lower time frame, is we could see price just test here, the beginning of this this consolidation wedge. This bullish wedge, and then push on up from there. And then one more scenario that we could see is we could see price end up holding at this level within this grey area like we just spoke about a few minutes ago. We could sort of see price drop down a couple more times into this area before we get maybe one liquidation grab where we go and meet liquidity levels at this level here, and then a push on up. So again, our overall bias, no matter if we do see a bearish, a significant bearish move over the next day or two, maybe the rest of the week is bearish, but our overall bias for gold as of right now is going to be creeping closer and closer to that previous all-time high, eventually creating a new all-time high. So that's going to be our midweek technical analysis. I hope everything's been good. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you've soaked in a lot of information. It's always good to watch these because you just get back in tune with the market, especially if you're having or feeling like a lazy day. You don't want to lock in. You watch something like this and it motivates you. It disciplines you to get back in the charts, especially when you have someone like me that's just going to do it all for you in terms of the analysis. Anyway, obviously, you can go into the charts and do your own analysis. Your levels might not look the same as mine. You might have different levels. That doesn't mean that you are wrong. It just means that your trading style / strategy is different to mine. But with all that being said, that's going to be our sort of one of three moves. Overall, higher time frame analysis is going to be a bullish bias. However, we could potentially see some bearish drops on the lower time frames in the meantime before price then builds that volume and builds the strength up to push up through this next point of interest. So hope you've all enjoyed. Remember, again, if you're not already in our VIP channel and you're watching this, just finding this on YouTube, visit our website at www.goldsignals.io or message our Telegram. I'll put the link here. And you can message our bot, type /plans, or you can type hey, and our customer support will get straight in touch with you and we will guide you on how we'll guide you through the process of purchasing a subscription with us and then benefiting off our signal. So once again, that's going to be our midweek technical analysis video. I hope you like the switch up that we've done this week. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate all the engagement. We're closing in closer and closer to 500 subscribers, which is an amazing target to reach. But yeah, we love all the continued engagement. Remember, continue to hit that like button, drop us some comments, let us know, even if just you want to tell us how your day is or tell me what your favorite food is. Just let me know in the comment below. Keep the engagement up, and I will catch you in our end of week technical analysis video. Peace.